live here, so let's see if we stream.
Actually, before you do that, I would prefer to wait for Marcus if everybody's okay. I'm not at a place where I can see the agenda very well. Let me see if that's true or not. Hang on. Yeah, I can do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, fine with.
We can do part of the
Whichever you
initial
want to do,
portions too.
Yeah, I can see it where I am. I'm just on my mobile phone, which gives me a little bit of a challenge. But let's get started. Go ahead live, and I can jump in.
All right. So this is Adrienne Thompson. This is the Bid Advisory Board's meeting of January 31st. It's just after 1:11 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. For roll call, we will note that Marcus Magdaleno, the chair, currently is absent. Vice Chair Dixon will be running the meeting until Marcus arrives at that point. The next item on your agenda is Planning and Building Services. I don't have any current updates at this time, so we can move on to the bid annual report. I don't know if Travis has any opening comments for you. And Marcus is admitting now.
I have no opening comments.
And it is 1:11 also when Marcus comes in.
Okay, no opening comments. We'll wait for Marcus then, yeah?
Apologies.
Connecting.
Apologies, sorry.
No worries, Marcus.
No problem, Marcus.
Yeah, we called to order. We've completed roll call and noted that you just joined the meeting. So we are prepared for the item 4, the bid annual report.
Wonderful.
Discussion. Take it away, Chair.
Call to order, roll call. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong agenda. There we go. January 31st. There it is. Roll call. Planning and Building Services. Agenda 4. There it is. Okay. 4A, discussion and direction regarding draft annual report for fiscal year 22-23. And let's go ahead and get started with that. The link for that report is listed on the county website. And so hopefully we're all looking at the same report. And let's see. Travis, do you want to take us through what's new and what's different from last year's report and just go through the report in full, and then we'll end with the recommendation discussion? Does that sound like a good plan?
Did everybody get a chance to read the report? I think, I mean, there's the sections that are new each year, which are the updates. The only thing that is not new, that hasn't been updated, is the budget for the year. So we need to discuss recommendations and some formatting issues, but that's about it.
Okay, great. Sounds pretty easy then. Let's go ahead and then let's go ahead and just jump right in. And if any board members have any questions about any sections that they have, that we can present them and address them. So I'll open it up to that.
I will share my screen so that you guys are seeing what I'm looking at. It should be exactly the same, but.
So did you say you want to just jump to the recommendations part?
Unless there are any specific questions throughout the report, most of it is boilerplate, and you can see the items that I've added for this year. So yes. Unless there's something specific.
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to confirm that that's what we're going to do. I think it's a good idea. We did all get a chance. I read through the whole thing. And as you say, the boilerplate stuff, it would be a good use of time to just jump to the places where you want any feedback or discussion, and then to the recommendations which are generated from us. I think that's a good use of time.
Great.
Yeah, so let's do that. Right now, let's focus on any questions we have regarding the body of the report, and we'll address the recommendations after we're finished with that. If any board members have any questions or comments or input regarding the report aside from the recommendations. Do any board members have any questions or comments or input?
Well, I have a comment, and it's a little bit lighthearted here, but I think it's in the recommendations section. There's something that says one of them was put off for a year, until after the pandemic, and it just may be kind of mild. And that is at this point. Anyway, we'll get to that one, but otherwise, no. My only comment is I appreciate seeing, and I do have a question when we get to it at the end of where the recommendations are. It's one section of it's all highlighted yellow, and I wondered, Travis, could you explain? Was that because there was like a cut and paste forward, and it's all showing as a change, or I wasn't sure about that with that notation of everything being bold. Yeah, you just Pat went through, I think. Does that mean it was added?
This was my question from last time, is should these items stay in the report or should they fall off the report since they're, you know, the old items? And it sounds like what we came to last time was that these will fall off the report and they'll stay in the history of the previous report.
I see. So you've highlighted them. They've not been.
That was for me, yes.
I'd like to suggest that maybe that we consider, of course, removing any that have been completed. We don't need to list them again on this new report. Any that might be in process, though, we might want to keep on the report as it does, you know, they might still be in process. And then, of course, any new recommendations that we create this year should be listed as well. That would be my input regarding these recommendations.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think that I would agree. This would be last year's recommendations which are then followed by this year's recommendations, which also address last year's recommendations that are in process. So just to clarify from you, Marcus, are you okay with all of these going away and then making sure that this year recommendations, which is actually the previous fiscal year recommendations, get carried over to the new report showing in process? Or did you want like 2 fiscal years ago's in process recommendations to also go on next year's report?
I think for this report that we're creating right now, I think any that are still in process, I think we should, it's my opinion, I think we should keep in the history of this report if they're still in process, if they're still being worked on. For example, the data collection, you know, I think it's worth it to keep it on the report if it's still in process and still looking to be done at some point. If it's completed, I say let's remove.
So what I'm hearing, I think, is that if it's in progress, no matter the year, it should remain.
That's my suggestion. It seems to make sense to me. You know, if we were to look back at this report later and you know, and to try to get a history of things, we could open it up and see, oh, this recommendation looks like it took 3 fiscal years for it to finally complete, because it's on the 1920 report, it's on the 2021 report, and it's kind of a way to see to track which recommendations are still in process versus, and then a separate section of the brand new recommendations we want to address this year or re-recommend. But I don't want to re-recommend every single one that we've already re-recommended that might be in process. You know, I think that we leave them in the body of the report as previous year recommendations that are still in process, and then we have the 22-23 fiscal year new recommendations. That would be my suggestion, my input. Travis, what do you, or
all good.
Yeah, just seems to make sense for, you know, for tracking the history. Board members, does that make sense? Does that seem to be a good way to continue forward?
Well, I agree with that. I think anything that's in progress, no matter the year, if we're all agreeing that they're still relevant and they should remain, and we should look at them individually, but that they would remain. And then I think just the idea is to clean it up. So, and also clean it up to the point where it's very, very clear. So anybody reading it knows what we're recommending this year and what's still left over. You know, I think right now, well, you got to wrap your head around 21, 22, 22, 23. And I'm not suggesting changing format. I'm just saying whatever we leave in there, it needs to be very clear, you know, for moving forward, just what we're recommending. And I think by cleaning it up, it'll accomplish that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think it's getting too convoluted with all these sections. Go ahead. Was that John Glidewell?
Yeah, I think there was a lag. Sorry, I just said I agree. That sounds really good.
So Travis, would you like us to go through recommendation by recommendation and get the board input of remove or leave, or do you want to just go based on what we've just said? Go through on your own?
I can clean it up based on what you just said.
Okay, and then we can review it when you send that back out. And if we have questions or comments, we can address them then. And it'd be good for the board members to go through the recommendations on your own and see which ones, on your own draft, X out which ones that you think are still in progress that would remain on the report. And I think they should remain in the report in the section of the previous recommendations. I don't think we need to re-recommend all the ones that are in progress in this current fiscal year. So in this upcoming fiscal year, sorry.
Well, in the years past, we sort of brought them forward and said, as previously recommended, we recommend this. And I think that's good. I don't like to reference back or make it harder for a reader, because if you think about it, if the recommendations for the Board of Supervisors, I would think they would want to look at that section and what is still open, what are we recommending, instead of referencing back. Again, making it as clean and as clear as possible. So I would suggest that we don't re-recommend, but we do it like we did in the past. I think we say as previously recommended, or even say as recommended in 2021 and whatever, how many times it was there, just to sort of make a point that it's been on there for a couple of years. If we still think it's relevant, that we put it so that there's a clean section that says there are still 6 items outstanding, if whatever the number is, that we recommend, and some are maybe in process, and some are new. I don't know if we have any new ones, but that's how I'd like to see it. That the section is very clean and very clear what is still open, whether it's.
I feel like if they're in process, then they're being addressed, and I don't feel the need to re-recommend them. If they're a recommendation that did not get any progress or any attention the previous year that we feel we want to re-recommend, that would be my suggestion on doing it. But I feel like re-recommending a recommendation that is in process isn't quite necessary, and I'd like to really just focus on the recommendations we want them to see in that section for the new coming fiscal year. Does that make sense, John? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I understand. I wonder if it's helpful then to look at them individually. There's not a lot of them, and I think that is probably the most use of our time in these meetings that we've historically used is to talk about them. And I think that we can do that starting today, because it might depend, Marcus, on which one and where in process it is, if we wanted to highlight it or not, or if we're very comfortable that it's pretty much done, whether it's collection of data at the county recorder's office process, which seems like it's nearly almost done, or other ones. I think it might depend on where it is in the process. If it still needs a nudge next year, I think it might depend on the item, I guess is what I'm saying. So
that's true. It makes more sense to do it case by case basis. Yeah. So let's do that then. Let's just go down the list of them. The completed ones, obviously, we can skip over, as Travis is going to remove those, and we can look at the ones that are either haven't been addressed or in progress. And that way, when we get to the new recommendations, we'll have a little bit of knowledge of what we've covered from the past years. John Glidewell or Cindy, do you have any input on that, and or any input or questions on the rest of the body of the report aside from the recommendations?
I just have a question. Can you define for me the difference between whether a recommendation previously put forward is in process or whether it was perhaps dismissed, like it's not going to get any more attention? How do we get that kind of feedback? Maybe that's a question for Adrian.
Well, so yes, Adrian reports from the county and I report from Nctc as an organization. and we will report to you if they're not going to be touched or what our boards or directors are telling us to do.
That would be good to know, because if there's some that have already been looked at, considered, and the likelihood of them being adopted is minimal, that would be good to know. Or if something is actually, yeah, we're working on that, or if, it's in process. There's a difference for me, I guess, between those two things. The likelihood of whether one of these previous
Right, and there was
is going to be adopted.
Hold on, Cindy, were you finished?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, good point, Cindy. Very good point. John Dixon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to interject, sorry, that there's a couple of them like that were actually put on hold because of the pandemic. So it's it's not necessarily in progress or hasn't been started, but it gives the reason, a very good reason of the pandemic. So it requires, I think, at this point this year, a new update to it. I agree with you, Cindy, whether it's tabled or will be in process, or if it's being shelved. So again, I think going case by case will get us there, and we can notate them if they're remaining, how is most appropriate.
Yeah, definitely. And there are status updates to all the previous recommendations that tell us kind of where we are in the report, at least the last time we made the report, and updates that have been made for this draft as well. But the city makes a good point. The one thing we don't know is if it went before the board and they were like, no, we're not doing this, and there's no need for us to reiterate it or re-recommend it. That is a good point. But I'm confident that Adrian and/or Travis would tell us if that was the case. So.
Well, can I interject again? I think there's, again, to specifics, one of them for Nctc was that way, where we made a recommendation about changing to the 89 law. And the report back was, and I don't know actually if this was for last year report back or for this year, I was a little unsure. But anyway, it said it was taken to the board and to staff, and it was a decision to not take any action on it. Mm-hmm. At that time is how I read that. So again, that's one. It would be helpful to go through them individually and sort of see where we are with each one, and see how we want to shelve it or notate it or push it forward or not individually.
Yeah, we're not talking about a ton of recommendations here, so that makes sense to just go case by case, one by one. So Travis, why don't we start at the top of the previous recommendation lists and just go through each one. So recommendation actionable by Nctc for 21-22, recommendation 1.
Are you asking me to read them aloud?
I don't think that's necessary. I think that we can just, the board can quickly read through it. And if we have any discussion or questions, we can commence with that. It looks like there was a status update as of the 25th of May. I mean, it seems like this is in progress. It seems like this is desired by the county as well, by all parties, I think, involved. And whether this needs to remain, I mean, the only reason to remain is to continue to show the status of it until it's completed. And that would be my only reason for wanting to keep it on there until it says, hey, this was completed. And then we write completed and leave it on that last report in that case. But I'm open to any suggestions from the other board members as well.
Can you help me with which one we are? We don't have to read the whole thing, but just tell me the topic. I'm on a phone and it's very small, and now it looks like all I can see is a status update. I can't see what the item was on the share screen.
Yes, it's to impose the TOT and the bid on private campgrounds.
Just the bid. Just the bid. The TOT is already imposed.
Oh, okay. So just the bid. And I know we can read through this really, but can we summarize, Travis or Adrian, the status of that and where it's going and when we think it might be completed?
I can't tell you when it will be completed. I'm working with CalCamp now, the advocacy organization, to outline a program to put forward to stakeholders, and hopefully they will not vote against joining the bid.
So what's the timeline look? I mean, like, what does that process, sorry, look like? It's,
Well, once I have a program in place that we think the Cal Camp Now and Mendocino County Tourism has developed a program that we think will work for campgrounds, we will then take it to campgrounds, have a stakeholder meeting, see if they like it, if we can get their buy-in. Then we'll go to county council and PBS and ask them to bring this project back forward. And then they'll have to go through their process again.
I see. Because the bid is a self-assessment, the majority of the campground owners, which I guess would be what you just said, the California, they have to, the majority of them have to agree to it in order for the assessment to move forward. Okay. All right, so that sounds like it's still in progress. I think it's worth keeping this on there to continue showing status updates.
So can I just, for clarification here, that update is added for this year?
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right.
Different than the update from the previous report.
So that was, and on the right side, when I see additions, and what does it show me? It was inserted, so I know what was added to last year's. Or that's
This is a whole new report. This has nothing to do with last year's.
Yeah, if you want to compare the status from a recommendation from last year, we'll have to open up the last year's report, the final report, and just compare the two. If you wanted to.
Well, I don't need to do that. I guess what I saw within this document that there were some like highlighted things that look like amendments and like track changes. So I wasn't sure because okay, so all of the updates that are written under each of the bullets basically are things, Travis, that you've written this year.
Yes,
right?
Everything in this report pertains to this year's report and report from last year's.
If there was,
right,
if there was any change
from last year's recommendations.
Correct.
So the bullets below are the status update, which is what we're reviewing. Okay, I understand.
As of this year.
Do we have, I can't scroll on this one, but do we have a status update for the ones that we recommended to the county?
Yes, but we're reviewing the Nctc ones right now. We're going to go through down the list systematically.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure I understand what I'm seeing. It's just sometimes confusing. Last year, this year, kind of stuff. So,
right.
On this one, then I have a further question. Well, it's a clarification. PBS is Planning and Building Services, which oversees the bid itself, correct?
The county executive office oversees the bid, so this technically falls under the CEO. What the CEO does for time constraints is they typically appoint a deputy CEO, and that deputy CEO has designated planning and building to be their designee. So I report back to the CEO, who technically oversees the bid.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, thank you.
Okay, so any more discussion on recommendation 1? I think we're gonna, for my recommendation, leave it on the report as the status update did change from the previous year, correct, Travis?
Yes.
Yes, so let's keep that on the report until it's completed, since that's in process. All right, recommendation 2, recommendation that recommends to the the Bid Advisory Board recommends, when it's appropriate, that the Nctc staff and board of directors will work with Civitas advisors or comparable bid consultants to explore and evaluate the possibility of changing from the 19th date, as there was no action because recommendation. So yeah, I mean, board members, do you want to chime in as to whether we want to keep this as a recommendation or take it off for now until we feel it's an appropriate time to re-recommend it?
Yeah, my notes I just wrote, consider removing entirely. And I would ask for your preference, Travis, on whether you think this is worth pursuing.
It's not, they're not gonna, the board will not move forward with changing at this point in time to the bid law of 94.
Well, we discussed having them explore it. Have they explored it and decided it's not valuable to do?
They have they have basically said they are not going to make the change to the 94 and did not want staff spending time working on exploring it.
Okay, good enough for me. I'm happy to remove this recommendation from an upcoming year's report. Any other input from board members? I got a thumbs up from Cindy. Hearing no conflict from either of the Johns. Oh, John, you chime in. John Dixon? No? Okay.
Well, I don't know who initiated this. I mean, this was when we first, a long time ago, right, set up Nctc. This was discussed at that time. We went around with the board of supervisors. And there was some desire at one point to change from some folks that were part of all that in history. And I don't know where it came up. This is new last year, I believe. Like, it wasn't something I carried over from previous. So it was this board. It was either you, Marcus, or one of us, or maybe it wasn't carried over to explore. And I remember talking about the word explore, the idea of it. I don't remember the benefits, sort of the positives and negatives to it. But if the board doesn't want to do that, there's no need to do that. And we can't recall the reason why, which is kind of what my question is. Why did we put this on here? Then it should go off if there's not something we want to push for. But I was just wondering. I want to ask a question again. Does anybody know where this came from and why?
My recollection was that it would move us to a 5-year reporting and contract process rather than an annual reporting and contract process.
Right. I recall. Right.
That was the main reason to explore it. There were many pros and cons to going forward with it. Our recommendation wasn't to recommend moving forward with it. Our recommendation was to explore it, to discover what all the pros and cons are, evaluate, and determine whether it was the proper move for the Nctc to move towards the 94 law versus the 89. This was in no way a recommendation to change to the 89. It was a recommendation to explore it. And given the feeling of the Nctc board currently, it doesn't seem like that's something they're wanting to pursue at this time. This board can always re-recommend it, or can always recommend it again in a future report. But I feel like currently we can remove this item. All right, hearing no objection to that, let's move on to item 3, recommendation 3, that an ad hoc committee be formed to explore ways to enhance revenue aside from the bid and the TOT for marketing of the county. Once again, I feel like, unless any board members have any objections. John,
I have a comment on this one. Thank you. The last year's report, I think there was a status update that caught my eye that said that MCTC's Organizational Development Committee engaged in discussion and the initial steps in forming an ad hoc committee to address this initiative in January of 2020. In March of 2020, the second meeting was scheduled for further discussion and action. However, due to COVID-19, the committee canceled that meeting and requested this recommendation move to a year following the pandemic. And then this most recent status update, it changed to this explanation. So I'm fine removing it if that's what we agree to do, but I wonder if there was originally some interest from MCTC to explore this, in which case would it offer value for us to keep it? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm wondering if Marcus, you do, or Travis, you have a preference.
I don't have a preference. I know that anything to do with funding is not a conversation that the board wants to have at all right now with regard to anything. They just want to let, trying to explore and find more and all of that stuff. The feeling is basically like business owners are going through their own struggles and we don't need to bog anybody down with this.
Right, it was an attempt to explore other avenues of generating more income to market the county with. And from my knowledge of the possibilities of that, it would probably be a lot of effort for very little potential reward, aside from if an ad hoc committee formed to explore this, the most likely outcome is they would come back and say, let's raise the bid from 1% to 2%, which is not an outcome I would want to see happen. So once again, that's another reason I'm happy to remove this recommendation from this report. Yeah. So
Yeah, I would support that, Marcus. Thank you.
Okay, Travis, we'll remove that one from our upcoming report. All right, number 4, that Nctc should work with shareholders and possibly Coraggio Group to select the most appropriate competitive set or sets of means of evaluating its marketing position and performance. And we had a status update this month. Status is spelled wrong. So Travis, do you mind just really quickly summarizing this?
We are engaged with Travel Analytics Group. They're going to provide resident and visitor studies for us. From that data, the board of Nctc will make a final decision on its competitive sets.
Great. Travis, do you foresee this final decision to be made before the end of March?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Then let's leave this recommendation on there with that current status update. Any questions or input from the remaining board members, the other board members?
Of course, if it does change, I will update the status.
Mm-hmm. Great. I mean, even if it gets completed, I think we should leave this in here, and it would be completed. Then we know it's completed, and we wouldn't have to put it in the next year's report.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Hearing no further discussion desired for that recommendation, let's move on to the previous Travis, did we go through the previous recommendations actionable by the county, or was this all just MTCC?
This was all Nctc.
Where's the recommendations previously recommended for the county?
Oh, for the previous years?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to go through all of them and then see if any of them, obviously we're going to skip over the completed ones because you're going to remove them, but to see if any of them are items that have status updates we want to come leave or
okay, so
no
we're going
actions.
back to the previous year.
So wait, did we not have any recommendations actionable by?
Clarify what you're getting at for me, because you've got me going back and forth, and I'm not sure where you're at.
We just reviewed the recommendations actionable by Nctc for this current fiscal year we're in right now, right?
Correct.
So where is the recommendations actionable by the county for the current fiscal year we're in right now?
Got it. There we go. Now
we were there.
Now I know where we're at.
We were there. I'm sorry. We were there. So this is last year's recommendations. We haven't created any new ones in the section below it, section 6. So let's, as a board now, review these recommendations actionable by the county, and it looks like we just have 3. Okay, we're getting a status update, and that's it. No action. Okay, so for the recommendation 1 that has an and or, there has been no action, none at all. Not even like efforts have been made by Travis and Adrian to get this to the attention of the BOSs.
Efforts have been made.
Yes, we've discussed. It won't go to the board for several months. The first part is having a county council attorney available to do a red line ordinance change. That doesn't come from my department, and it doesn't come from Travis either. I have to work with county council and have someone available to do an ordinance change to section 5.14 and change the definition. So the discussion started, but we have not been able to coordinate a date or time since everyone is having major staffing issues around the county right now.
Okay. Well, we're having major issues filling the Nctc board of directors, so I think this is probably my my like hot ticket recommendation for this upcoming year to re-recommend. But Adrian, county council needs to advise on either one of those, whichever direction they go. And we had determined last year, there was one that seemed to be a lot
The
easier.
definition is much faster. If anything, we'll be tackling the definition first because that's a quick ordinance revision that once we can find someone should take 3 months, assuming we can get on board calendar. It'll be first reading, second reading should approve it on consent. But that's a 90-day timeline from when I have a red line ordinance, which currently, unfortunately, my one county council representative is in litigation this full next week. So I don't even have the ability to really ask a timeline this week. Maybe next week I can get a timeline. I'm hoping by the end of fiscal year, so let's say by June, we get the definition changed.
Okay. And I'm curious, I obviously want to re-recommend something along these lines, if not the exact same thing, but I'm curious, given that info, whether we re-rock.
Please don't change the recommendation.
Go ahead, Travis.
I said, please don't change this recommendation at all, or it might halt the work that has already been done to get this into county council.
Okay, good to know. I was only going to suggest removing the more difficult of the two options, making it easier and more
That's doable, but don't
get too hasty here. I wouldn't change it, but for different reasons. Also, the status update seems like it's not no action. There's a lot of update that you just gave.
Well, I realize that. I will go in and actually write a status update for these now that we're talking through them with Adrian.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, so I guess the question is, to the rest of the board, we recommend it as it is, as we did in this previous year report, if it indeed is an intention to re-recommend it. So give your input on yes, we recommend it, and whether or not to leave it as is, or to potentially alter it by removing the more difficult of the two, which is the second part. Correct, Travis?
Change the yes.
Okay, so let's go one by one. John Dixon, you chimed in, so go ahead and give your input.
Let me just get the definition change as reported by county staff is easier, and that is, to be clear, the change from business owner to manager, like we've written it here.
Correct.
It's the definition of
lodging operator.
Who can represent. Yeah, lodging operator. Okay. And then the second and/or we had lots of discussion about last year. That gives it one or the other, and I think that's still fine. The next is the one taking longer, and okay.
Can we stop John for the interest of time until he's in a place where he's got enough service?
Could nobody was he breaking up for everybody?
I can't.
Yeah, John.
Sorry,
you were breaking up.
He's gone now.
Oh, we lost him. Okay.
I'll watch them. Just to I know we heard him say that it was more difficult. So the second option says that we need to change the ordinance and readopt your bylaws. So that's at least 4 public meetings for me with the board where I need to change the ordinance. I need to red line your bylaws and readopt your bylaws, which have to come through you first as a bid, then be heard by the board and approved by the board and adopted. So that's 4 public meetings versus 2 for a definition. That's why it's more difficult. It's 2 documents and 4 meetings.
Sorry, was I breaking up? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we can hear you now. I'll let you know if we start breaking up again. Say again.
Okay. So sorry. Yes, and thanks, Adrian. I think I just was summarizing for myself and for everybody to remind us where we were, and I was getting to the fact. I think that for me, they're both important. And I think we worked on the language enough, and I think that because they are separate, but within the same thing, that we can accomplish them separately. Meaning the first one, the easier one, can be done and still accomplish the goal, which the goal is to get a bigger pool of applicants. Both ways would be great. One, the definitional way would be terrific too. So I would vote, this is, and I'll, put it to everybody else, to leave it as is, and then update it because some work has gone into it, and just to continue that work as there's time. And of course, things move slowly, this kind of thing moves slowly, but I would like to keep both in here, and meaning leave it as is. That would be my.
Okay, Cindy, would you mind giving your input as to whether you want to re-recommend this recommendation, and if you do, whether you want to alter it in any way or leave it as is?
Yeah, I would definitely put forward to keep the recommendation. Kind of heard Adrian's comment, resonates well with me too, that it's much more likely that this will happen if we keep it simpler and just drop the second half and stick with the first, which is, I'm leaning towards agreeing with that.
Okay. John Glidewell?
I agree with Cindy to expedite the process to see some sort of production happen. I would go with the first one, drop the second one.
Okay, thank you. The question is, by presenting them both, does it reduce the possibility of them taking action on one or the other versus if we presented just the first part? That is kind of the question. And I guess my quick reaction to that would be, the board, I don't think it should muddle it up, presenting them both again. County council would advise that the first part is easier, would take 2 meetings. The second part would take 4 to the board of supervisors, and they would probably say, and they would take that into consideration. So I'm actually leaning towards John Dixon's recommendation, and I've backtracked on my own, of leaving it as is. So we've got 2 as is and 2 narrow the focus recommendations. So Adrian, can you chime in?
Yeah.
Does it affect by leaving them both in the chance of them adopting part 1 or part 2 any less likely than?
I don't think it will change the likelihood of the definition happening first. I think in essence of time, why change Travis's language in your previous recommendation? So I would leave it as is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like by keeping the second part, they're less likely to adopt and take any action.
Correct.
Versus just presenting the first part. So
I'd like to update my position after having been better informed, and I agree with leaving them as is.
That's fine. That's fine with me too, especially now that there's more clarity and understanding that it's not going to slow down the process by leaving the second option there.
Okay. All right. So we're all in agreement then. Perfect. And then so I guess the agreement is to re-recommend this for the upcoming fiscal year on the report. Great. Got that, Travis? Yep, he's got it. All right. And recommendation 2 from this current fiscal year that we're in was, as previously recommended, that the county revise the TOT and bid forms to collect data. And I believe there is progress and action on this, and it is in everybody's, all related parties, to-do list, and will happen as soon as it can possibly happen. And by us recommending this again, will not change that result. Is that correct? Correct, Travis and Adrian?
Correct.
As far as I know, yes.
They're having technical issues. Well, yes, technology sometimes.
And I'll write an actual status report or status update that is decent.
Great. So let's keep this in the history of the report as a previous year recommendation to receive status updates as to its progress until it is completed. But I don't feel we need to re-recommend this. I'm quick thumbs up. Yep, got a thumbs up from John Glidewell. No need to re-recommend. If there is an objection to I got a thumbs up from Cindy. So I'm in silent, so I believe that means it's good to continue on. All right, number 3 was with the knowledge that there is new site. This is part of number 2, isn't it? Or related to? Isn't it? Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this will happen along with when number 2 is completed, number 3 will move along. So I think we need to probably just put a little status update that cannot move forward until recommendation 2 is completed. And then we'll just leave it in the history of the report until there's status to change on it. Is that good for the rest of the board? All right, all thumbs up. Oh, Cindy, thumbs up. All right, great. Wonderful. And then Travis, in the not this current fiscal year, but in the whole yellow section that you highlighted up that was from the previous year's recommendations, are any of those still in progress? Or are they all completed and or?
We'd have to look over them. I can't remember. That was 2 years ago.
Okay, so board, do you want to go through these as we just went through the other ones really quickly and determine if what we do and don't want to leave on this, or do we want to let Travis sift through the ones that have been completed, remove them, and look at this again at the next meeting?
I vote for the latter.
Yeah, these are all, as I'm looking through,
Yeah,
these are
Travis.
all either readdressed with a new status update or are completed.
Okay, can you, so before the next meeting, can you remove any of the completed ones, any of the ones that have been readdressed, any of the ones that don't need to remain there? And if there are any you're unsure about, we can just look over them as the board with the board at the next meeting. And for the board members, if you are, if you're curious in the next meeting as to which ones or what might have changed, you can always use last year's report to compare what was removed between what is what Travis has removed. Makes sense. Yeah. I think you got me. All right. We are on to recommendations actionable by the Nctc for this upcoming fiscal year. Do any of the board members have any recommendations they want to share?
New recommendations, I have none.
I have none either.
I also have none.
That would be the same for me.
All
I have
right.
none.
I think that is a good indication that we've gotten ourselves, all this organization to a good place, and we're moving forward well. So as of now, we don't have any. That still might change until we finish this report. But let's move on to actionable by the county recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year. We have decided we are going to re-recommend from the last year the recommendation 1. Do we have any other additional recommendations we want actionable by the county and board?
Same answer from me on this one.
No recommendations for me.
Can I ask, there's some left over though, wouldn't those move into this?
Yes, they will, but there are no new recommendations.
No new recommendations. It says no recommendations at the time. So I just want to be
Right, the only one that's carrying over.
But remember, things that I'm typing are just for me to get the report in order.
Okay.
So
Okay,
you will,
and so my understanding, there's no new recommendations, but we'll move forward the ones we just discussed in this section is my question, right? It'll go into
These
the
will come back down and be represented.
yes.
22, 23 section. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Only recommendation 1 from the 21-22 fiscal year will be re-recommended actionable by the county in the upcoming 22-23 fiscal year. And he's doing it right now. Easy peasy. Okay, I did have one thing I wanted to throw out there, and Travis, I know you're not going to like this, but I wanted to discuss it, and I imagine it's not been a problem before, but this is the forum to and get input from the other lodging owners on this board. Travis, what have you had any issues? There's of the board, of the 11 seats on the board, 6 or 5 are designated for lodging, 6 are designated for other related businesses. Have you had any trouble filling any of the other 6 seats?
No.
Easy. Okay. Because the only thing I was possibly suggesting and going to suggest was exploring changing the makeup of the board to add 1 more lodging seat and removing 1 of the business seats. But
I have a waiting list for the other board seats.
wow. Okay. So it is only lodging that we have an issue filling. So
Correct.
we probably don't want to explore adding 1 more lodging seat, as that would not resolve the situation.
Correct.
Okay. And it would probably be a very controversial issue if we did. So just wanted to vocalize that.
Can I ask a question, Travis? In your opinion, why do you think that's the case?
Well, so this is a Mendocino County thing that I see in lots of boards. I serve on 4 to 5 boards. There's a small handful of people who are willing to do the work, and those people are getting burned out. They've either served on the board before for many, for multiple terms, and there's no interest in, as hard as we've tried to get new people to join, they're either too busy with their own businesses, et cetera, or they don't have any interest in being on the board. And that's what we ran into this last time with the large and small seats is the board chair and I literally hit the pavement and couldn't get anybody to file for the election.
But Travis, you say that there's plenty of a pool for the remaining the other six seats that are designated for specific business areas of the county. You said there's plenty of applicants and pool from that.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Cindy's question also was why is that the case for the 6 non-lodging seats versus the lodging seats? And I imagine because the pool is much bigger for the 6 non-lodging seats, whereas the lodging seats are very specific. I mean, we've got what, about 20 lodging establishments that make up large lodging?
Yeah, between 20 and 25, depending on
fill 3 seats on the board.
Yeah.
Whereas we've got how many medium lodgings would you say?
Oh, I'm really gonna stab in the dark right off the top of my head. Let's say maybe it's
100,
80 to 100. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was gonna. That was what my memory was too. And then like 300 remaining small, or was it like 400 remaining small?
Well, now we're up to almost 600 remaining small because we've got the Airbnbs and vacation rentals folded in.
Right. So yeah, it's really the 3 seats. We have like 20 to 25 options versus the rest of the seats have far more options, which is why obviously recommendation 1 is being re-recommended. And so yeah, okay. Hopefully that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
All right. Well, if the board has no other recommendations that they want to suggest for the upcoming fiscal year, I think we are at the completion of this meeting. Yes. All right. Any last inputs regarding the report before we move off the agenda item 4?
Travis, do you need any help with editing this time around, or are you feeling pretty well staffed to cover?
I'm staffed to do it, but I certainly will not turn you down as we near the end of the cycle for one last read, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Do you want me to just? Well, when we get to that point, maybe you can just send me an updated copy that's editable.
Yep, I'll just send you the most updated version.
Perfect. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Sure.
Can I ask to help with that too? I'd like to help with that as well.
Thank you, John Dixon. Travis, you heard that?
Yep.
Great. Wonderful. All right. I'm going to move on to item 5. Unless anybody has some last minute. No. Okay. Hearing none. Moving on to agenda item 5. Any communications received or filed? And filed.
Nothing received here.
Okay. Any matters from the public?
We do not have anyone in our waiting room.
Oh, surprising. I thought they'd be knocking on our door to hang out in our meeting. That's weird. Okay.
Not today.
Number 7A, approval of the minutes from our previous meeting last Monday. I'll need to entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Wonderful. Looking for a second.
Second.
Great. Any discussion regarding the minutes from January 24th? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving say aye.
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 Vote passes unanimously. Great. And then we are on item 8, adjournment. I guess we need to wait. Reminder of our next meeting will be
February 11th?
Friday, February 11th. Does that still work for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
At 1 p.m. Friday at 1 p.m. on the 11th. Great. We will see you all then. I promise not to be late on that one.
Ah,
I just jinxed myself, probably.
right, exactly. I was like, don't make promises.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you,
Thanks,
Adrian
everybody.
and Travis, for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
And we'll
everybody.
see everybody on the 11th.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.